I wanted to talk today about cultivating Christlike ambition, which sounds like a theological topic, probably is somewhat. But the things I'm going to share with you tonight, I have been thinking about recently because they have helped me not to be so depressed. Because of this recent circumstance with the overlapping crises in the United States, and it just seems like one thing after another. It's been sometimes really hard for me to even get out of bed in the morning. Like honestly, like I'll be in bed and just be like, I don't want to get up. Like I don't want to face whatever is going on today. And so I started thinking, well, why do I feel like that, and how can I address it? So I thought of a thought experiment that when I tell you this thought experiment, you'll probably ask the question, how in the world did that help you not to feel depressed? Because this thought experiment is kind of depressing. But just bear with me, think about it. If you had all the resources in the world, in the universe even, and the power to accomplish whatever you had in mind at any moment, with no one able to stop you, and you looked at the world the way it is right now, and you had to come up with a plan of how you were going to use your infinite resources and power in order to fix this world, the one we live in, which is out of control right now, at least America is, right? Do you think that you would actually do what God did? Because he actually did have this as his prospect, as his goal. I want to save the world. I want to redeem this broken world. And what he did, just think about it for a second, by any human measure, was folly. It was folly. It really was. I mean, when you think about it, okay? He's like, okay, first off, I'm going to become a man. Okay, that's not a good idea. You're God. You should do the cool things that only God can do and not become a man. No, I'm going to do that. Okay, fine. You're going to become a Caesar, right? Okay, high priest. Are you going to at least be born to a wealthy family? Have a lot of land, something you can work with. You're gonna be born in a big city, urban center, lots of influence, tastemaker, a rock star, something, anything, something, right? Give me something to work with. No. I'm gonna be born to the tiniest little tribe, to an unlanded family that was basically migrant workers, to a nation that is totally and completely devoid of all sovereignty, in the lowest rung, totally and utterly under the thumb of an extraordinarily anti-believing world power. Okay. And then what are you going to do? How are you going to accomplish this goal that you have in mind? Well, then I am going to have the stupidest disciples from the worst families, going to hang out with the poorest, most destitute people who can never help me or hurt me or do anything else of the kind. And I'm going to spend, a few years doing that, wandering about. And then at the end of that, I'm going to die a criminal's death naked. Right? I mean, that's actually the human story of Jesus' life. He was born an insignificant person. I mean, if you try to scour the history books at the time, you can find lots and lots of names mentioned. I think they might mention Jesus one time, and they didn't even spell his name right. They call him Christus. Right? There was some turmoil with Christus. I don't know, crazy Israelites being Israelites, Seriously, like that's all you see. You see it in like one secular historian. So you're talking about insignificant guy by human measures. Totally insignificant by all human metrics. He did nothing. I mean, did he write books at least? No, not him. He didn't. He didn't write any books. His disciples wrote books. Okay, well, they were really important, really well educated? No, they were fishermen. Okay, but here's the other thing that's really, really crazy. God actually accomplished his goal. Right? You ask anybody, you can ask seriously the most anti-Christian, unbelieving, God-hating person on this planet, who is the most famous person in all of history, and it's Jesus by a long shot. Just type it into Google. It's Jesus by a long shot. We divide the hemispheres of all human history on the basis of his existence. There was a time before that guy and a time after that guy. That is the most important person in history when you're measuring all of history on his existence, right? Nobody denies that. Nobody can deny that. They can do like BCE, CE, whatever they want to do, but they can't get away from the fact that that is how we measure our time. Okay? That guy, seriously, Jesus is the most important person in all of human history. How did that happen? Really, seriously. Isn't it enough to just shock you? Like absolutely shock you with new, refreshed amazement at the fact that Jesus actually accomplished what God sent him to accomplish. It's crazy. It's a terrible plan. Seriously, any marketing guru, lord of business, I don't care, whatever you want, bring him in and say, is this a good plan for influencing the world, for changing the way things are? They'd be like, absolutely not. Absolutely the stupidest plan I've ever heard, but it worked. And theirs don't. Because Rome is a ruin, but the church is not. In spite of all her mismanagement, which Chesterton says was one of the greatest signs of God's divine involvement, because the church hasn't been destroyed in spite of the fact that it's had 2,000 years of very bad management. Okay, any human institution under that kind of management would have already long since failed. And they do. That's what I'm saying. That happens all the time. Civilizations die. Empires rise and fall. Like that happens all the time. How is it possible that the church will prevail against the gates of hell? It's crazy. How does it happen? How does it work? And I think what we're seeing now, part of our depression, is a feeling of futility. Right? Like, I actually think futility is the worst feeling you can have. If you ask most women who have had children, what's the worst experience you've ever had in your whole life? Most of them will not say childbirth. Even though by all measures, so I've heard, there are very few things more painful in all of human experience than childbirth. But what is it about childbirth that makes women not think that's the worst thing that's ever happened to me? The baby, right? You have a baby and you love that baby. And every time you look at that baby, you think it was worth it. Whatever it was worth it. And you keep paying it, right? You keep wiping their faces and doing the dishes and cleaning up after their poop and pee messes and all the rest of that stuff. It's gross. It's terrible work. And you love every minute of it to the extent that you're focused on this thing that you love, this object of such great love. Right? So like really that pain, that suffering, that service, that sacrifice, that's not really, if you were to ask most women, that's not really what they're going to focus on as the worst thing that's ever happened to them. But if you ask most people, it's effort that seems totally useless. Right? It's pain that you've suffered that doesn't seem to have come to anything. Why did I go through that? What purpose was there in that? What was the effect? What was the consequence that I was working toward? Right? And you think, I didn't get it. I fought really hard. I hurt really bad. I put a lot of investment, a lot of resources into this, and it didn't pay off, right? And the Bible talks about this. That feeling is called vanity in the Bible. And Solomon, who apparently knew, because he was the wisest man that ever lived, said that everything was ultimately vanity. That there wasn't anything that intrinsically was worth it. So when you wake up in the morning and you think it's really not worth it, that's probably true. It probably isn't. So why wake up? Why do work? Why do anything? You're never going to overcome the fact that you don't know what your actions will result in. You don't know what will be the outcome of them ultimately. None of us do. You can't know. And you can't do anything about the future except for think about it. Everything that you can do, you can only do right now. So how do you keep from being completely bowled over by the tyranny of the urgent, right? And by your fears and fantasies? How do you keep that from happening? Well, I think that there are three things that we need. This is where I get into 3 points. There are three things that we need, and it's pretty simple. We need a better goal, Okay? We need better directions, and we need a better drive, better motivation. Those are the three things. So it's a destination, directions, drive. Okay, that's what we need. We need those three things. So let's talk about them for a second. I'm not going to keep you too long. In terms of destination, your goal is what you have in your head that is your picture of the good life. Right? Each of you has in your head a picture of what the good life looks like. You do. And there are things that you do in order to try to accomplish it. Right? But most of us really think about it. What is it really? I mean, you can say, oh, well, seek the kingdom of heaven and God's righteousness. That's not really what most of us are actually looking at as the picture of the good life. The picture of the good life is our total good, right? What feels good? What is good to you? In your eyes, what is good? And that's what you're thinking. That's what I want to accomplish. So if this person is not doing for me what I need them to do for me to make me feel this way, then I'm going to forget that person, right? And so you're constantly, then on the basis of that vision of the good life, it's giving you directions. If this is the life that you want, here's how you can get it, right? So what is a better vision of the good life than our own? Because our own is always going to end in futility. You understand? Whatever you think, like I need a bigger bank account, futile. I need to be a better dad, futile. You're going to screw it up. I need to, whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't care. You can name anything that you can possibly name. Some of them even good and very religious sounding, and most of them are going to end up futile. At least you don't know how they're going to turn out. Okay, so where do we get that goal? And then aside from that, where do we get directions to get there, which might be more important as a starting point? And I think in terms of directions, in terms of the directions that you need daily directions, right? Like general directions are not going to do very much for you. I need directions every day, like because I can't make the journey all in one moment. Like I have to actually do something every day. What am I going to do this morning is important, right? Okay, so I need daily directions. I need to know what I should be doing right now. And then also I need a better drive. I need a daily drive. I need a reason to do it and a way of accomplishing it. Right? Like I need tools, I need resources to do whatever it is. Like, I mean, if you think about it like a journey, you have a goal where you want to go. I want to go to Detroit. Okay, why do you want to go there? Oh, never mind. So I want to go to Detroit. Okay, well, how are you going to get to Detroit? Oh, well, I have a map. Okay, good. You have directions. Yeah, I made directions based on the map. Okay, well, how are you going to get there? I'm going to walk. No. You should probably get a car, right? You got to get a car. You got to get some drive, some way of getting there, right? So those are the three things we need. And I think that we find all three of those things, well, from the scriptures, okay? But in Jesus, really, truly. And it's actually in his example. Do you see how powerful this actually is? What did Jesus do? Right? I know it's like a wrist bracelet or whatever, but it's actually a really important question, because oftentimes when you look at it and you say, what did Jesus woke up every morning and had to do something, right? And he prayed about it and he asked God about it, but he had to do something. He had to do something every day. And when did he know what it was that God was going to accomplish through him? When did he know that? When do you think he knew that? Like, when did he know the goal? Save the world, right? When did he know that goal? When do you think? Okay, I think he knew it before time, in one sense, and also I think that he grew into it as a human being, right? Because he was a baby, and he grew into a child, and he grew in wisdom and understanding. Now, I didn't say that. That's what the Bible said. So I think he did grow in wisdom and understanding. And in many ways, he suffered from the same finiteness that we suffer from. He even said, like, only God knows that. You're like, well, yeah, the Father knows that, but you're God. So why don't you know that? So there's all these kinds of things where you have to struggle with the fact that Jesus lived his life as a human being and he did all the things you could do. If ever you look at Jesus and you think, well, he was God, of course he kept himself from sin, or of course he followed God faithfully and perfectly, because he was God, so he's Jesus and he's different than I am. Well, in reality, you can see that all the things he did throughout his whole life, you are capable of doing. I mean, really. And they won't have the same impact that his actions did, right? I mean, they're going to save the world, but they might make a difference. And what he did is he asked God for daily directions. He says, give us this day our daily bread. And then he tells the disciples at a different point, my food is to do the will of my Father. So like his daily bread, in many senses, was God's will for him for that day. Okay, so how did he determine God's will for him for that day? I mean, really? Have you thought about this? It's weird. And I think he did. There are two things, right? There are two things, I'll tell you. And this has to do with your directions or whatever. You have directions for you that apply to everyone. And you have directions for you that apply to only you, that no one else can do. In fact, no one else should do them, right? Like I have a responsibility to love my wife in a certain kind of particular way that none of you are even allowed to do, right? So, and if you try to do that, be like, well, this is the right thing to do. Michael's doing it. It's like, get out of here, Like, that's not. So there's obviously things that are particular to you that no one else has a responsibility to do. And then there are things that aren't particular to you that everyone has a responsibility to do. And thankfully, Solomon tells us in Ecclesiastes the things that apply to every person. And he says it because we're all a little slow on the uptake. So he just tells, hey, when everything's said and done, right? When you've read this book and felt like everything is absolutely futile and you have no idea what is the purpose of even continuing another second, remember this, because this applies to every person. Fear God and obey his commandments. And those two things you can use every day to help you. Truly, you can, every day. Because if you fear God, the fear of God is very much connected to faith, and it's exercising that faith every single day. You believe him. You believe his promises, and you believe his warnings, right? And that will protect you from both fear and fantasy, because you'll replace your fantasy with the promises of God, and you will replace your fears with his warnings. I don't need fear, because I'm not walking off the path, right? I'm staying close to him. And doing that every single day, fearing God and investing in that, and then keeping his commandments. He tells us things. It's like, it's crazy. It's like he actually told us what to do in the abstract, in the general. I mean, sometimes you'd be like, well, what does it mean to not murder? I understand that. But he really did tell us what to do. He gave us rules and instructions, and a lot of them are very specific. And if you do what he says, that will be good, right? It'll be good for you. Okay, and then the specific thing that has only to do with you, and it really does have only to do with you. And this is God's dispensation of the Spirit, to you. And he talks about it in Romans 12. You guys have been reading through Romans, right? Did you recently read in Romans 12 where he talks about, let not any of you think more highly of himself than he ought?
Yes.
But each one according to the portion of faith that has been given to him, right? Let him do for the church, basically, ... right? So there's lots of different people. There are people who are called to exhort, people who are called to lead, people who are called to teach, people who are called to serve, people who are called to be generous, right? Not everyone's called to the same things. That's what he says. Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought. Other people have other jobs. They have other specific tasks that God has given them through their gifts. And the Holy Spirit is actually working through them to do things. Don't worry about that. Did you know that all the commandments of God, which is weird, it's really weird, are in the singular? So God came before all of Israel, right? And Moses writes the 10 Commandments. They're all in the singular. So it's not, you all shall not, whatever. You all shall have no other gods. It's not even, I have brought you all out of Egypt. It actually says, I have brought you. Like you, singular, you. I have brought you out of Egypt. And it's very much razor focused on this tend to your own business. Really, mind your business. We're always doing this. Because you know what isn't singular? All the promises of God in the New Testament. They're all y'all. But the commandments are you. And we flip that. We always want to flip that. We want to be like, can't all the commandments be for y'all so that I can avoid responsibility by saying someone else should have done it? And can't all the grace be for me and only me, right? But that's not how it works at all. We actually experience the grace of God in community, but we experience the justice and responsibility of God individually on our own feet. And that's not the way we want it. But what that means is that every single day that you wake up, you have a particular responsibility and no one else is going to do it. It's your job. And you know what's funny is even if you do it, Jesus says you're still unprofitable. And I know a lot of people are confused about that. What that means is there's nothing added. There's no profit. There's no gain. You're still giving in for out. Like it's a zero sum as far as God is concerned. He hasn't gained anything from your service. But if you didn't do what he asked you to do, you would lose. We have to start viewing this particular dispensation of the Holy Spirit in our lives as God's gift to us, a blessing. Responsibility is a blessing. And it doesn't actually matter what comes when you're obedient, what follows, what is produced by it, because you believe God's promises. You believe that it will be good for you. And so you just do it, like Jesus did it. And he did it every day. And when it was time for him to go to Jerusalem, he went to Jerusalem, and not a moment before. And when it was time for him to tell people he was the Messiah, he told people he was the Messiah, and not a moment before. And then when it was time for him to get up on the cross, he got up on the cross, and not a moment before. He did whatever it was. We can imagine the morning that Jesus woke up, and it's the day. Today, you're going to die on the cross. Like, that'd be hard. That'd be really hard to hear that day's duty was dying on the cross. And I think all of us have those moments where you wake up and God's like, hey, I have something for you to deal with today. Unexpected. But this is the day's business, right? And how do you meet that with hope? Well, you stay close to Jesus. Seriously, it really is that simple. You just stay close to Jesus. He did this. He did this. And if you stay close to him, you pray to him, you ask him for his Spirit to help you. And then you look at what he said to you, whether it's through your own particular gifting or through the general commandments that are given for everyone. You look at that, and then you do what he asks you to do and leave the consequences up to him. And a lot of this stuff is local. You know what is needful because there are people in front of you who need things from you. And so often we're leaving the people in front of us to go do some distant big thing because we want to change the world. And I get that. And especially, I'm still somewhat young. I'm aging. And I think the better part of wisdom is just the weariness of age. And because I'm just too tired to be a fool anymore, right? I can't deal with it. But I have ambition. I do. I have ambition. I want to do great things. But I'm realizing more and more that he who is faithful in little is faithful in much. And if you really want to accomplish great things for Jesus, do what Jesus did. Don't grasp after some huge fantasy legacy, some really big change the world kind of thing. That's not necessary. What's necessary is for you to obey God and fear him, trusting his commandments and his promises and his warnings with the thing that's right in front of you. Seriously, just right in front of you. Don't worry about much beyond that. God will bring in a reward. He will. He'll bring in a harvest for all of your labors, because everyone who works unto the Lord does not labor in vain. He says that. So I just believe him. Okay? You take care of that then. You take care of the profit and the harvest and the reward and all that other stuff. And I'll just put that in your hands, God. Because am I better at that? I mean, seriously, none of us are better at it. It's not like we can force the right conclusion. We've always failed, right? So it's like, why not just say, you know what? Hands off. You deal with that. I'm not going to mind my own business. Do what you told me to do and let you deal with the consequences of that. And I think in a lot of ways that's good. That is the right way to go. And right now that's really been getting me through the days. Just wake up in the morning. Don't worry about the overwhelming weight of the total collapse of democracy. Don't worry about that. It's not your job to fix that. It isn't. It's your job to, make coffee for your wife. Seriously. Or talk to your kids. Your 5-year-old son is screaming at the top of his lungs. This kind of thing. Like, that's what you're dealing with. And then when you learn that those little tiny things, this is crazy. God's going to take those little tiny things and he's going to do something amazing with them. And he's going to return the reward of that investment to you. You don't deserve it, but he promised it to you. And he's not unjust. He'll do it because he said he would. So I don't know if that gives you any great deal of encouragement, but a lot of these things in terms of the destination, the directions, and the drive are really just faith, hope, and love. That's what it is, right? So hope is the goal. That's what you hope in. You trust in this vision of the good life. And faith is actually the fear of God. It is humbly submitting yourself to God's promises and warnings and doing what he asks you to do. That's how faith operates. That's how faith exhibits itself. James talks a lot about that. And then love is actually the engine. And it's also the fuel. Because what's weird is Jesus says, my food is to do the will of God. So as you do the will of God, you will realize that you are eating your own service as well. That the service becomes satisfying, where you feel refreshed by the work that God's given you to do. And the tyranny of the urgent is replaced with the responsibility of the present. And you feel very present in those moments, right? Connected. And so anyway, that's what I had for you today. And I do pray for you all, because I pray for this country a lot right now. There's a lot of troubles. And let me pray for you right now. Lord Jesus, we have huge obstacles in front of us, not any larger than the things that you faced in your own day, and that all generations faced. Every generation thinks that they're facing the end of the world. And help us, Lord, because we see so many things, or at least we think we see them, of the world. It's a very strange time where we can see what's going on the other side of the globe from the comfort of our living rooms. And sometimes, Lord, it's overwhelming. It just is. It's absolutely overwhelming. I pray that you would please give each one of the people in this room peace that really passes beyond understanding, and help them to be with you humbly as they go about their daily business, and teach them the value and significance of their daily business, and don't allow them to grow weary in doing good. They will reap the harvest, as you said. They do not faint. Amen.